dear brothers, dear sisters, we often hear about essential services. What are essential services? Well, normally we'll say, well, it's about health, so we need the drugstore, we need hospitals. And maybe we'll add, well, we need security, so the police is important, essential service. Will we think about spiritual life as being essential? And maybe it's one of the things that we can rediscover through this pandemic. Our spiritual life is not something that is whatever we can think about it. It's not something that you can put aside. It's not something, okay, if you can have a spiritual life, that's good, but if you don't really need it. No, this pandemic shows that spiritual life is essential. Spirituality is essential. For instance, all of us, as we are going through this pandemic and we're looking for meaning, maybe for solitude, isolation, maybe sickness, maybe difficulties in relationships, and maybe meaning of our life. We're looking for meaning. And when you look for meaning, it's a time to pray. It's through prayer that you find an answer to the meaning of your life. It's not in prayer that you open your heart to God. And this spiritual search, this longing for having meaning in one's life, leads to a spiritual life. Other dimension, we know that it hasn't been easy for those who lost the dear ones. The sorrow, the grief is not easy. It's difficult. We understand it's difficult. We understand why. We understand confinement. We understand the rules. But nevertheless, it still is difficult to go through grief by our own strengths. But prayer helps us. Spiritual life helps to go through the grief. Spiritual life helps to believing in life and believing in loving. For marriage, all those who had plans for marriage and couldn't get married because, yet again, understanding confinement and the rules and not being able to have celebrations or to have a large feast, it's understandable. But nevertheless, it's difficult. There's a sadness through it. So spiritual life helps, because through spiritual life we find the strength of the soul to move ahead, to believing and living and in loving. So spiritual life, we rediscover, this pandemic is an occasion to rediscover the essential character of spiritual life as a dimension of the whole of the person. We are body, yes, very important. We are heart, psychology, emotions, very important, but we're also a spirit. And this is very important. This is essential to rediscover the spiritual dimension of the whole of the person.